Soccer head coach Tony Keyes and his Conant High School team celebrated the end of 1999 triumphantly. The Conant Cougars won 4th place in the state in November. As a tribute to their accomplishment, we'll meet these exceptional athletes, some of whom live in the village. We'll also learn a little bit more about this sport and finish with a summary of the Conant soccer season. Stay with us and we'll explain how a former art teacher with a passion for hockey led the Smurfs to victory. Community Event will be right back. The man who would lead the Cougars to state fame wasn't born with a passion for the game. A different pastime inspired Tony Keyes' love for soccer.
And it was funny because I looked at it as a big version of hockey. It just had 2 big goals, you know. And that's how I got interested, because hockey was my favorite sport growing up.
His father, I know, is here tonight.
Tony was a member of the first ever Elk Grove High School Soccer Club in 1976. A college art major quickly became an education major and helped steer him into a teaching career.
Well, I've always been an athletic and sports-oriented person, and even my artwork reflected that.
One of his first jobs included conducting art and soccer classes in Conant High School. When the school promoted Tony to soccer head coach, it only seemed natural to incorporate his art background into the sport.
A sign of a good coach is to be able to paint a picture and to communicate. So that's in a figurative way, you know. Now literally I can paint a picture, but figuratively what I do for our players is I paint a picture so that they can understand it and they can see it, and then therefore take my vision and execute it on the field. I think that's a fun part of what I do.
Besides coaching soccer at Conant High School, Tony keeps busy educating players of all ages and skill levels. He has established a soccer club and a skills camp at the Park District. Tony also participates in the Olympic Development Program, which conditions elite players eligible for the U.S. national team.
A life of its own. So I've got all these different areas now where you know, I can help the players in the game at the various levels, from the little tykes to the elite players, and my involvement in the Olympic Development Program too is another area. So there's all these areas now that I'm involved in the game, and it's a lot of fun. Keeps it fresh because it's not the same thing all the time. Different levels, different kids, different environments.
Tony defines soccer as the following.
Most team sports thrill by the perfection of the repetitions, soccer by the improvisation of solutions to ever-changing strategic necessities.
A sport that favors spontaneity united an equally unpredictable Conant varsity soccer team. Although half of the players share an Elk Grove home in common, they all claim different reasons for getting involved in the sport. Some followed in their family's footsteps, or in this case, kicks and shots.
When I started, all my siblings, my 2 brothers and sister, they all play soccer. And so my dad started playing soccer for a while, actually, and so did my mom, so we were all just a big soccer family. And then they got really into it and tried to push all of us to be the best soccer players we could be.
Others were culturally predisposed to love soccer.
Coming from a family from Europe, I mean, soccer was basically our primary sport. It was followed mostly throughout the house, more than any other sport. My older brother started playing before I did, and I enjoyed watching his games, so I tried it out, and right away it became my favorite sport. It was basically the only sport that I did actually play throughout my childhood, but I was involved with it fair amount that I didn't really have time for any other sport.
And a few decided to break the mold.
I became involved about when I was 5 or 6, and no one else in my family had played before, and no one else in my family was really into the game. But I just tried it out and kind of stuck, and I came to be pretty good at it, and it was a lot of fun, so I just kept playing through junior high and high school.
What the 1999 Sacker Cougars did share was a characteristic that made winning 4th place in the state unlikely. More than half of the players were shorter than average, which led to their unofficial nickname, Smurfs.
One of the common fallacies is that you can be any size and play the game. Well, yeah, you can be any size and play the game recreationally, but at a competitive level, typically the bigger players have an advantage as long as they're athletic. You take a bigger player who's fast and strong and has a reasonable amount of athleticism and skill, and they'll be almost always a better player than the smaller player who has the same attributes. So, you know, we were on the small side this year, and that was a concern. So we were the Smurfs, and the Smurfs did well this year.
We wanted to find out what qualities enabled the Cougars to overcome that obstacle and beat most teams in the state.
Maybe compared to some of our other teams, this was a more sophisticated team. They could play a number of different ways, and they played the most demanding system that we've ever implemented at Conant, and they played it well. So I think that's great.
Let's take a look at some key components to be a Cougar soccer player.
Skill.
Good control, excellent control by number 8. Adrian trying to run through. Conant, nice little chip over the top. You can see it right in front of you. Beautiful camera pass. Off it to the nose. Well, usually not much of an omission, but definitely worth your time. Lots of young men and women in the spring playing this game. Somebody's on offense.
Grit.
We're all on defense. Whoa, there's a nice header. Very good. Got up, walking it off. Conant still out of defensive. People trying to work too much, people rolling over.
Defending.
You got too many people on it. You got to push it back. So try to do something with it, nothing there. Nice little move against Conant. Going through the midfield transition. Conant's going to show if they still got the speed. Maybe it's pushing the ball up to the outside, defend inside. Looking for somebody to pass it to.
Goalkeeping.
It happened so quick that the offensive attackers couldn't pick up on it. Far side, he's got Cookman. Trying to get support up here. Conant's got too many people to outlast him. He turns around, makes a quick shot with his left foot. But Mr. Dan Ford, Conant, matter of enough
Goals.
There's a whole lot of soccer being played in the Chicagoland area. And he referees. There's a nice header. Oh! We get across from number 12 of Conant. Called up the signal to come from the ball. Try to keep it low and try to put a little slice on the ball. Now with his left foot, that was a strong shot. Oh, it's from the situation. But they won't give up. Now they're showing what they've got too. Little touch in here to number 17. He puts the shot on. Oh my God. Beautiful goal. 14.
Teamwork.
Number 12. Conant with the ball up. 12-17 playing it. Coach smartly pushing it back. Their defense is third, but changing the field to the far side. Coming through midfield. A little bit of long ball. Diego gets the ball. Conant touches it back. Now coming back to this left side again. Drops the ball off number 12. Conant. pushing the ball up, trying to dummy through. He'll back to number 21. 21, they don't want to see the ball coming at him.
Don't forget to have fun.
Tony talks about some Conant seniors who turned a shaky season into a sweeping success.
Overall, I'd like to say that that was our leadership group, and I rely heavily on our leadership group.
Dan Ford, the goalkeeper, was a Smurf, and common sense would dictate he was at a disadvantage.
But he never made it an issue because he was intelligent, you know, and he was one of the unsung heroes. He didn't have great statistics, but he always made the plays. He distributed the ball well. He communicated with our defense, and he was a leader. So he had a great season and was the backbone of our team.
Dan Hart played central midfielder. His position focuses more on offense than defense.
And played a huge role, absolutely huge role in our season, and scored some big goals for us. And well-taken goals, too. Of all the players on our team, he could strike a ball maybe the best, particularly bouncing balls and volleys. He was adept at that.
Jeff Behrens was on defense, but he didn't stop there.
Could play strong defense as well as create opportunities on the left wing, overlapped quite a bit, and it was dangerous, put up a good free kick, and was a very, very solid type player. He was just a count-on-me type of kid, and you just knew what you were going to get from him every game. He was solid, and again, maybe a bit unsung, you know, as well as maybe all the guys in the back were a bit unsung. But, you know, his contribution is probably immeasurable.
Mark Behrens was a second midfielder and recognized as an all-area player.
And Mark was a major force. He was the guy that he was like a pillar of strength in the midfield because he was amongst the Smurfs, you know, and Mark is about 6 foot. So him standing next to some of our other midfielders made him look even bigger. And, you know, stature-wise even, you know, his presence was felt. And he was very fit, played both ends of the field, very composed. And like his brother Jeff, was one of those players that didn't play soccer year-round.
Ron Chiaro played forward and as such scored the most goals with a total of 14 for the season.
He's been a big part of our team for at least a couple of years, you know, and even as a freshman, you know, he made his contributions. In his sophomore year, he made his contributions, but junior and senior year, he was a major force. And the goal he scored in the soccer bowl that made it 3-2, the game winner, was just a thing of beauty. A little flick over to a volley, and it was one of the better goals of the year. So it's been a pleasure for Ron to be part of our program and for me to coach him.
Well done, John.
Tino Ginelli played left wing to set up the end line for forwards.
When it became crunch time, he just willed himself into the lineup. And in the end, he was out there all the time. Unbelievable work rate, great energy, played with passion. He played on energy and emotion and enthusiasm, and it was infectious in our team.
Many of the players met Tony while learning the game in youth camp. They share with us their profile of the coach.
Well, he's a very good coach. He's always thinking about the game because he's pretty much dedicated to it.
He's also a very competitive guy, and you know, he likes games and he just likes to compete, and he's really young at heart, and he still plays the game a lot, and he just has that enthusiasm that sets him apart from most other coaches. He's more of a friend than a coach to us because we've known him since, most of us have known him since we were 12, 13 years old, and he's been our coach since then. And he's more of a friend, and he's like the last coach to ever get mad.
Obviously, we couldn't have done any of it without Tony. Even when we weren't playing as well as we could have, he never gave up on us. He just kept giving us motivation and kept making us believe that we could do it and we could put this together.
The coach, I mean, tells you pretty much everything, like how he wants you to play in the system and everything. I mean, Tony, he picks out like the systems that he wants. He looks at who he has and what system would fit the team real good, and then we just try that. And
he just reminded us, just if it's just not there, our heart, just let the heart take over and help us through it.
My style is assess and address. Assess the game, address the issues, train it, and then let the kids play. And it's much like the classroom. There's a parallel there. If you notice, there's, for instance, a classroom teacher will teach all week, and then on Friday, there's a test. Now, unless it's an open book test, the teacher doesn't get involved, you know, and that's the same way with soccer.
When we come back, we'll take a closer look at the games that made history for the Cougars. Don't go away. Tony's Cougars are no strangers to victory. The team has gathered 8 regional trophies and 4 sectional trophies during the last decade. But it had been 8 long years since the Cougars competed for the Illinois title. Tony and the players described the difficulties they faced around mid-season.
We went in a drought. We seemed like we couldn't score. It's not like we were playing bad, but it seems like little mistakes were killing us. I mean, we were playing halfway decent, but we couldn't score, and like we were holding teams back like for most of the part, but little mistakes would kill us, and then they'd capitalize and score on us, and then we just fall apart after that and just couldn't come back and win.
And it was confusing to us because we had the talent we felt, but it just wasn't happening for us, and for whatever reason, it was tough to put our finger on it though.
We just decided, even when we were losing, we decided that it doesn't matter what we do now because we're going to win the conference and then we're going to get to playoffs. So
Eventually, the coaching staff decided to redesign the lineup according to the numbers.
So we put the 3 players in the front line that had the most goals. And so we put Ron Chiro up top and right in the middle, and then we put Mark Detterman wide right, and when we put Javier Allday wide left. And as soon as we did that, it just started to click on the field.
Tony says he became more of a manager than a coach at that point by allowing the team to develop its own personality and excel on the field. As we now know, this technique certainly did the trick.
And that was part of my evolution as a coach, my maturity as a coach, to kind of let the personality of the team come out, because that's who they were. And in the end, it was the right decision because, you know, when it counted, they were there.
Let's enjoy a recap of the last conference games that led to the Soccer Bowl and the playoffs.
The final week of the regular season was big for us. We had 3 divisional games, as we see highlights from the Hoffman game. Nice save off the line for us. And, of course, this is the Hoffman game. It was Hoffman and then Schomburg and then Palatine that set it up. And here we see Mark Detterman scoring after he missed a sitter just a moment ago. And wants to make sure the ball got in the net, so he went and retrieved it. Now here's a nice flick by Ronnie. And that made the score 2-1. And here we go now with a goal that made it 3-1. Nice little skill piece here by Kyle Herstead, and Tino gets on the end of it and rolls it under the keeper. And then Hoffman tied the game 3-3. And then Dan Hart picks a corner for the eventual game winner. And for good measure, Ronnie's going to find a rebound here and put it in the back of the net. So 5-3 was the score there. Then it was off to Schomburg. And Sebastian Felinski took the free kick, and then you saw the own goal by Schomburg. And Tino finishes off a breakaway right there for a 2-0 lead. Second half action, Mark Behrens with a terrific header right there. Upper 90. And then Ronnie Chiro finishes off the game. Final score there was 4-0. And then that set up the showdown between us and Palatine, and winner was going to go play in a soccer bowl against Rolling Meadows. And here comes a goal by Mark Detterman 5 minutes in, and that lead held up till about 5 minutes remaining in regulation. And then Mark Behrens scored a goal with about 3 minutes left, and we held on to win 2-1. And Tino can attest that the Palatine game was a tough game.
Another reason for the Cougar success was the involvement of the fan base. Parents, staff, and fellow students pumped up the team for playoffs.
That just made us play harder than we would have, because, I mean, if they showed that they cared about us and gave us a little bit more of an opportunity to show what we can do and make the sport become more popular than it is, they showed great fan support and pretty much helped us out when we were down in the game and made us pick it up and just made us play a little bit more harder than we would have.
It was just great.
The Behrens brothers explain what it felt like to get ready for the playoffs and the state tournament.
But just to actually experience it is, you can't even explain it. But we just really came together at the end of the season. We had a few tough stretches in the middle where we lost some games we should have won, but we just put everything together at the end and just developed some team chemistry, and it took us a long way.
The past season was overall just a great experience. Obviously, it's not something you expect going into the year to go downstate. It's a goal that we all, I think, had set for ourselves, but if anyone would have told me before the season that we were going to make it as far as we did, I would have told them they were crazy.
As far as the playoffs go, you really can't say you're disappointed about anything. Sure, we were a little bit disappointed about losing the semifinal because we know we could have gone to the championship game. But once you get that far, you can't really call anything a disappointment.
We've saved the best for last. Here come the last goals of the season.
Soccer bowl was a lot of fun as we jumped out to a quick lead. And here's Ronnie scoring the first goal of the game fairly early. And we're pretty excited about that time. And Meadows was, of course, highly touted and playing a great season. And we got off to that quick start. And here's a rocket by Dan Hart being deflected in by Josh Kwiatkowski for a 2-0 lead. But it didn't last long as Meadows tied the score. And watch this thing of beauty now. Ronnie does a flick over to a left-footed volley for the game winner. Final score was 3-2, and we were Soccer Bowl champs. Now here are the playoffs, and first game against Hersey. Great goal by Sebastian Felinski, second ball off the corner. And this is overtime. And let's just watch and enjoy. Wiki with the left-footed rocket. Eluded the goalkeeper, and it was time to celebrate. Couldn't celebrate too long because we had a rematch with Palatine, and again we jumped out. There was a great shot by Mark Behrens. That's fairly early in the game as well. Score there is 1-0. Tell we're having a good time at this point in the season. And nice goal by Ronnie coming up. Little back heel flick. Great goal. 2-0. The Palatine clawed their way back in the game. And we had to go to overtime. And it turned out to be a controversial goal. You can see that Tino appears to be offsides. However, if the ball was flicked by their player, perfectly legitimate. But if it was flicked by our player, then he would have been in offside position. And I guess the only people that know if the ball was actually flicked are the players themselves. It's too close to call. But anyway, it went in our favor, and we won in overtime. And at this point, you can see our student body getting involved and swarming the field. It's a nice win for us. It's a great feeling right there. And it was off the play for Emd, and Sebastian Felinski opens the scoring with a great goal. Nice free kick. And then the game winner with about 3 minutes left. Mark Behrens. Beautiful tip in. And we held on to win that game 2-1. So that sent us into the Super Sectional. And watch this cracker by Dan Hart. Boom. Great goal. And that was it for the game. It was 1-0 final. So we're off to state. And realizing a dream. And we paired up with Amundsen on Friday night in Rockford. And this is early in the game as well, off a corner kick. Nice turn and hit by Mark Behrens. And by now he's patented this celebration. And you can see our student body there getting into it. And this is our second goal by Cal Herstead, Mighty Mouse. His first goal of the season. Makes it 2-1. But Amundsen would come back and tie the game at 2. And then Ronnie with the game winner right there. So the next day was the semifinal against Lincoln Way. They had a 2-0 lead and we were fighting back. And Josh Kwiatkowski makes it 2-1. And that's the way it ended. So all in all, it was a great run.
The Cougars have been enjoying their much-deserved success since November. School District 211 and the Village of Elk Grove held ceremonies in their honor. As a matter of fact, the tributes haven't stopped, which prompted parents to dub this season the season that never ends. Thanks for watching. Please join us next month on Community Event.